Hello, and thank you for joining us today at Toastmasters District 3 TLI. My name is Sanket Sangam, and I'll be moderating this session along with Edna. The session is Secretary, Sergeant at Arms. Today, our speaker is Aislinn Ellis. She is from West Valley Toastmasters Club 8146. She has been a member of the club since 2019. Let's welcome Aislinn Ellis.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to your Saturday morning. So I am going to talk about Secretary first, but I am also going to cover Sergeant at Arms, which is what SAA means. Now, it's taken me 2 years in Toastmasters for that an acronym to stick, because we really haven't had Sergeant at Arms, although now that explains why all of the Toastmaster stuff ended up in my garage. So if you're a Sergeant at Arms and your club went from meeting in person to meeting virtually, you probably have a large amount of Toastmasters. I want to say paraphernalia, but that's probably not the right word. You have a large amount of Toastmasters belongings that are floating around your club some kind of way. Well, that is a huge responsibility, and you also want to make sure that somebody who comes after you has access to that. So we will get to that. Let's go ahead and get started with Secretary. There we go. Secretary, Club Officer Training. Our agenda today, right? We're going to cover the Secretary role, what the responsibilities are, and also go through some resources and best practices. We're going to identify your role, fulfill your responsibilities, and find resources that help you. Now, I'm a big believer at that because TLI is great in that it provides a source of information, especially if you're doing the role for the first time. What it doesn't do great on is real world, because there's so many different ways that clubs handle what they're doing. So when we come together at TLI, my favorite part is what we're all doing and how we're succeeding in actually implementing those roles on the day-to-day activities. So that'll be a large portion of our conversation. You already know who I am and kind of a little bit about me, so we'll skip over that. There we go. So I love the way that this is broken down, because you have the club meeting, right, which is the bulk of what we do at Toastmasters. You have behind the scenes at the outside the club meeting and the executive committee meeting. As secretary, I'm pretty sure everybody knows that the board secretary or secretary in general, you're responsible for taking and capturing notes on the activities that are relevant for legacy purposes, and also so you can refer back to decisions and discussions to help move your club forward. So before the club, upon arrival at the club meeting, and during club meetings, this breaks down what you're responsible for at each interval. And that has changed a little bit. I think everybody has finally succumbed that we're not going to be the same that we were since COVID. So we are working on some different strategies and updating some of these tactics. But however, before the club meeting, you still need to post, share, circulate, update the previous minutes. Now, in my club, we use Free Toast Host. That is a website that is created for all Toastmaster clubs. At the end of the meeting, we'll do some Q&A, and if you don't have one and you'd like one, we can pull up some information on how you can, resources on how you can obtain that. But that's what that looks like in our club. For updating the previous minutes, we simply use the agenda. The agenda is a great way to communicate what happened, who was there, and the start and end times, and any decisions or club business that was discussed. Prepare a list of action items for the president. This is great that you pull it out and hand it to the president, but talk to your club president. They may prefer to do that on their own. Update the club's officers list. Now, this isn't specific, but what this means, that club's officer list, is that you know who your executive team is, and Toastmasters International needs to know. So we're going to put Toastmasters.org in the chat, because that will be your source for all information. That is a great comprehensive website. It does have its quirks from time to time because they are constantly updating it, and that's a good thing. So For your club officer list, go ahead and go to Club Central. If you're taking notes for this meeting, go ahead and go to Club Central and make sure you maintain the club's officer list there. In-person meetings. Now this is where we're kind of trying to update and figure out and separate for in-person club meetings as well as for virtual club meetings. So in person, you're responsible for the attendance and the guest book. And that's not all clubs. Some clubs have taken for the membership director or the VP of membership to be responsible for the guest book. So make sure you're communicating at your very first executive officer team who it is that needs to do what. In virtual meetings, you're simply responsible for documenting attendance so that you know who is coming and who's been there, and make sure all of your members are engaged. Read previous minutes, note amendments, record current meeting minutes. So you're taking minutes, like that's the bulk of the responsibility for the secretary. Outside the club meeting, AKA behind the scenes, you're going to maintain an accurate roster. The roster simply means who the members are. So however your club maintains that, that's one of your primary objectives. Submit the club officer list, we handled that. Handle club correspondence. So you're responsible if you guys do a shared email. I would assume that you are in charge of that shared email, that you go in there once a day, once a week, whatever interval that you guys discuss to handle the club correspondence. You're responsible for keeping the club files. And then of course, you're going to want to attend the executive committee meetings. Vote at international business meetings. This comes up, I believe, once a year. And there's a whole proxy thing. It's not a huge responsibility, but it is something that you should be aware of. And if you have questions, ask your club coach, ask your club president, ask the longest member that has been there. I have found that David Hopper is a great resource. Lisa Raymond is a great resource. It comes up, you get emails. The main thing is to stay on top of your Toastmasters emails. They really gen and tell you what you need to do when you need to do it. Facilitate member progress in base camp. This one really falls to the VP of Education and president. If a member for some reason contacts you and says, hey, I did this a while ago and I haven't gotten credit for it, that's what that's referring to. Is facilitating, making sure that you're helping the communication for your guys' members to get progress through pathways. Arrange for your replacement or assistance and prepare for your successor for office. So you're going to want to train. No different than a job, you're going to want to try to train somebody coming into your position if you have the opportunity to. The executive committee, read the previous meeting minutes, note amendments to the club charter is what that's referring to, and then record current meeting minutes. And that could be as simple as recording the meeting or recording the action items. So the key here is keep it simple. Find a system that works for you so that you're not having to type. In this day and age, you should not have to type word for word minutes. There's so much technology that will assist you in capturing what happens in a meeting. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm sure people years before us wish that they had the technology available. So being secretary should not be taxing now because of all, like if you're not familiar with the technology to capture notes, then let's talk about it in the Q&A. How to fulfill the secretary responsibilities. It tells you the how, the when, the who, and the what. The action plan. Questions to ask to take back to your club is basically what this is referring to. How you are going to fulfill your responsibility, when each action item will be completed, who is available to you, and what materials and resources you can use. Best practices. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. There we go. I'm going to take you to give you just an idea of what an option is for managing some of your club affairs as secretary. Gmail inbox. Gmail has a really great way of keeping all of your club information separate from your own and accessible to everybody. So in my club, the club president, myself, and our club coaches have the password to be able to manage everything that's in here. We utilize Google Drive. When I took over this, it's called a legacy club because it's been in existence for more than 25 years. But when I was president of this last year in COVID, I went ahead and transitioned all of the documents that we had and broke them down and put them in a central place, some place where I could just pass forward the username and password so that people had all the same information that I did. And I broke it down and I try to keep it as organized as possible. But we start using, the virtual, in the virtual environment, the ballots and the timers, the scripts that we use for our roles and our logs. I found that I broke them down and started keeping them here. So Google Drive is just the simplest way I could transition a club that was more hands-on and used to doing things kind of the old-fashioned way with paper and handwritten notes. This was the simplest way I knew how to transition. So starting a Google account is something that you could bring to your club for discussion. This is actually, they actually have a workspace. It's called the Google Workspace, and they actually have one for nonprofits. So this does not cost us anything a month. I literally went to Google Workspace and created and followed the prompts from there. And I was able to build this system for our club. One of the other ways that are used in best practices to manage your club is the free Toast Host website that I spoke about. This happens to be ours. This is also in itself a contained way for your club to maintain information and to communicate. It's probably more effective in some ways than the Gmail, but it's got a little bit of a learning curve to it. There are trainings that can be done. DJ does a great training on the free Toast Host websites. And they have a way to, they have a Toastmasters.org. There's information about free Toast Host websites. So we have free resources, public downloads, the club calendar. But what our club mainly uses our website for is the club agendas. So like I was saying, the agenda is one of the easiest ways to go ahead and maintain your club communications and the history that happens in your club. One of the coolest things about a free Toast Host website is that it allows you to reconcile the agenda. Now, when I first started being secretary and attended TLI, I had heard this, but nobody really explained to me what that meant. So as presenter this time, I was like, ooh, I have some information that I can make sure that everybody is aware of. So this is our upcoming meeting, but a previous meeting, you would simply, this is our agenda, sorry, and what it looks like. Our previous meeting, and you can do this, I found that you can do this actually while you're in the meeting that day so that you can do attendance. And that's one of the main responsibilities as secretaries we have. So I would go to edit, to attendance, and if a member has signed up for a role, it automatically tracks attendance for you. The only ones you really have to worry about are the ones that show up as uncertain. Now, I've already reconciled this agenda in the previous training, but it does break it down really easy. It has yes, it has no, and then in the bottom left-hand corner, it has reconciled. And what reconciled directly translates to is who fulfilled what role. So you want to make sure you update your agenda if you're using this type of website, free Toast Host. If you're using this, you want to make sure to capture, like I said, the attendance. And there's a fun way to pull all of these types of reports if your club actually uses them. So there's no official requirement for attendance that I'm aware of that Toastmasters International puts on us. It's simply there if you want the information, and that is up to the club president. So if the club president made a request to you, hey, how many members attended the last 3 months of meetings, you would be able to capture that information relatively easily. If you are not comfortable or you don't have a free Toast Host website, I would recommend a spreadsheet. It's a simple solution that you can update and easily share. Okay, so that is what I had for best practices. Let's go ahead and open it up, Sakeeth, to Q&A. Stop sharing. There we go. I'm in the chat here. Oh, thank you, Michael. Making sure multiple people have access to the password does not get lost. That is super, super important. And I would always recommend that the president be the one that it has that as a primary, like they are responsible for the username and password. Other people know it, but if it needs to be changed, that definitely goes up the chain of command to the president and make them responsible for that.
Yep, there has been historically times when someone moved off and didn't share their password, didn't respond to emails, and then a club resources has lost it. So I think you have a tremendous suggestion that you have 2 or 3 people at least sharing that account. That's a really good idea to limit your exposure to that happening.
Yep, and it could even be a club policy like it's ours that we change it once a month. And that's, excessive, but in the world we live in, with hackers and stuff like that, it's certainly not private information. As Toastmasters, we don't keep credit card numbers and things like that on file. So there's not a ton of proprietary.
Right. Yeah.
We don't even keep the club roster there because it's available on Toastmasters International. So be aware of your systems and how they overlap and work together. And identify that for people that are coming in into your position so that, again, that does not get lost. A very if this, then that type of document. If you need a club roster, it exists here. If you need club rules, it exists here. Here's the club charter, it exists here. Just breaking it down very simply for in a document. It can really, really save your club a lot of conversations, I have found. All right. At this point, does anybody have any questions about being club secretary, maybe for the first time or about anything that I've said so far?
I would say this, there are some clubs that have definitions over the difference between an active and an inactive member. And your recording attendance is very important for establishing that to determine if a person should become an inactive member. Many clubs don't have that, but if it's in your addendum of club documents about what an inactive member means, and you've missed 3 meetings in a row, for example, that person becomes inactive, your taking attendance is critical. And for instance, an inactive member may not count towards the quorum of a club vote.
That is a very good point, Michael. So yeah, we have different rules and regulations for clubs for a reason. The club charter sets out what type of club that it is to what objective. Us personally, we have a club vision statement and we strive towards personal growth. We're what I call a baby step club. If you want to simply get in the practice of pushing the envelope in a supportive atmosphere, we laugh, have fun, and we point out, we get you in that habit of professional speaking, getting up and speaking in front of people. We don't have a ton of club charter objectives other than that. We're a very small club, so we don't take attendance, but it's there for posterity. So a new president, if somebody shows up and they end up being president in the next term, then they are able to do the research about who has been active in the club, and they have that history that transfers down the line, because that was something that wasn't very well kept in the legacy before. So that was, trying to figure all of that out. That takes a lot of extra time. And the thing that is great about Toastmasters is also kind of the thing that sucks, is that it can take a lot of time. It depends on how dedicated you want to be, but you are actually in Toastmasters for a selfish reason. And the time you spend in Toastmasters should be serving yourself as well as others, but the part about serving others shouldn't be so difficult. It can take a full-time job running Toastmasters if you let it. So my other piece of best practices is to set boundaries. Like I specifically give Toastmasters, the club, for everybody else, I give them 2 hours a week. outside of that, it's for me and my personal growth and my objectives. And I feel like that's a healthy balance for the size of the club that I'm in and for my role and position, because I've spent all of last year almost making this a full-time job for myself. So that is a boundary for me. And that's something that I encourage everybody, just as a professional organizer and being in charge of what you want to do and personal growth, is to set that boundary on what you're willing to give Toastmasters for an executive position as well as for yourself. I think that's very healthy to set goals that way and boundaries. Anybody else?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one is, I think the primary role, or not the only role, but the secretary needs to make a note of the meeting notes, right? And then that's one of the primary roles. How does it work in the virtual environment? Because we record all our sessions, so everything is recorded and it's digitally available. So could you shed some light in with respect to virtual? Do we really have to make notes still?
Well, that's awesome. So the notes could be as simple as what I've done in the past. If you have a free Toast website, there is a option at the bottom of each meeting agenda that literally says meeting notes. So as we're having the meeting, I will capture important things there and then save it. And that can be saved as a PDF document or printed. And you can keep a binder if that's what your club does, or you can simply save it virtually in a Google Drive, for example. One of the other really cool things about recording is in the chat feature. You guys use Zoom, I presume, for your recording?
No, we use Teams, Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams. Okay. That I'm not specific with, but I believe they still have a chat feature that you can save the chat. So in the chat feature, I know with Zoom specifically, when we record a meeting, it actually creates a separate text file. It's just a simple plain document, TXT. And so when there is something important to take note, I capture it, and then everybody is aware of how it's worded in the actual chat of the meeting live. And then it's afterwards, I take that file, rename it, and move it over to the Google Docs. So it literally takes me a minute after every single meeting, and I've captured all the important notes for that meeting that week. So it's just developing a system. But as far as I wouldn't put it on you, especially being first-time secretary, that could get really overwhelming really fast. We're not professional court transcript people. So trying to do a Word document and doing all of that and texting what everybody says, that is not the extent of secretary anymore. We are redefining that now in this day and age. So play with the system. And if you need a test meeting, find a test meeting partner. We have found that that's been very helpful when trying to explore our systems. So do a shortcut that way. Either use your free Toast so that it's captured with attendance as well. That's a 2-in-1 benefit. Or I like simple text documents. I've almost eliminated paper and notes from my life because of just the simple text notepad feature on my laptop.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, so Sankeeth, at this time, can you drop in the secretary handout that I sent? Do you have that?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a 1-page PDF document that perfectly summarizes what you're responsible for, and it breaks it down really nice. So that is a good resource if you just want to print that and take what you want from it, then we'll print it or save it. Take what you want from it to go ahead and use that. But it sums up all of this stuff. Getting started, you guys are doing the best thing possible to get started. You're at TLI, you're getting answers to your questions. And because each club is so different, really your club is going to be the best resource on specifically how you do things. All we are covering here is what your responsibilities and objectives could be, right? Here are some additional resources that are websites. Again, if you notice, it's all toastmasters.org. These are the specific links within toastmasters.org. If you're looking for a digital guest book, that's there. The club officer list, the one that you're responsible. And I would honestly say the takeaway is attendance and club officer list. Like if you do nothing else as secretary, those are probably highlighted as the most important. Use of Toastmasters materials, and then of course the Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. Like that's a team effort. You should be aware of where to find that, but your president should really be leading that charge and telling you what your role is in that. Who is ready to move on to Sergeant of Arms? Okay, so Sergeant of Arms looks the same as far as our agenda goes. Exact same session objectives because TLI is really good that way. They have concise information that is familiar and easy to absorb, and that's what I like about it. So we're going to break down the Sergeant at Arms responsibilities the exact same way that we did the secretary. Before the club meetings, upon arrival at club meetings, and during club meetings. So before club meetings, if you're meeting in person, you're going to want to confirm the room reservation, especially in COVID times. People are overworked, understaffed. It's not that far-fetched to think that a reservation that you had just last week would suddenly be double booked or misplaced. So I would encourage Sergeant of Arms to, if nothing else, send that email or make that phone call if you're meeting in person, and ask for any updated COVID protocols. You know, hey, are you guys mandating masks now? Are you mandating the showing of vaccination cards? Make sure that you're communicating so that everybody who you're kind of responsible for the safety of everybody at these meetings. That's a huge responsibility, but I just mean in terms of communication, making sure that the restaurant or the place where you're having the club, that you're trying to do what you can to make sure the communication is there as far as their COVID protocols go, and make sure that it's available to you still. Ensure there are club supplies. In this day and age, I would say disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer. If it's available, encourage that as people are coming into the room. Have it available so that people who choose to utilize that feel safe. Wipe down a doorknob or a table, because then that extra bit makes people feel safe and ultimately goes to the morale and the safety of your club. Okay, in person at club meetings, you guys have the physical heavy lifting, right? You guys are supposed to arrive early, set up the tables and chairs if applicable. If you're in a restaurant, because I was reading in the chat that some of you do meet in restaurants, I would strongly suggest just coordinating with the manager or the hostess or the person responsible for serving your meeting to see if there's anything you can do to help make their lives easier. If it just means circulating one menu, right? If it means helping stage each seating place with a menu, it's those extra things that make your club really stand out and make a smooth meeting. Set out meeting materials and promotional materials. Check room temperature. That's a little far. Everybody is so different in Arizona. Yeah, I don't know what 37 degrees feels like in Phoenix, but I know what it feels like now in Cottonwood. So checking the room temperature seems a little above and beyond, but if that's your heart, then feel free to do that. Ask guests to sign the guest book. Again, I have seen more the VP of membership take over this role. So just make sure that that's clear on who is doing that activity. I kind of look at Sergeant of Arms as the switch hitter on the team, right? On the executive club team. You guys have the ability to fill in where other positions fall short. So if the VP of membership isn't able to attend, then feel free to step in that role, but make sure that it's discussed ahead of time and with the rest of the executive team. Virtually. What I loved about this was the president has so much that they need to do. You guys, again, can step in as the presiding officer role. Didn't know that until this year. And I thought that was so awesome that the Sergeant of Arms can also step in and just open the meetings like they do in the in-person environment. You guys usually do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you do read the club mission or club vision or the Toastmasters mission statement, you can still do those functions in the virtual environment. Just make sure your agenda reflects that. coordinate other ways to help with the executive team. So if there's a call to just, hey, if so-and-so can't make it, I don't take on club role unless it's needed. So that you are at that last minute, we already have somebody that we have a backup in case somebody is unable to attend, either virtually or actually in person. You can take on a club role. Club meetings, welcome late arrivals. Again, I've seen VP of membership do that. Coordinate food service, if any. I think that's more like if you're having a meeting in an executive space, in a downtown meeting, co-working building type space instead of a restaurant. I just want to make sure that that was clear there. Collect ballots and tally votes when necessary. If you're doing club business, so this is not the vote counter. Like, you're not the default vote counter, unless of course that's something you decide with your executive team. But this is referring to official club business. So if you guys are taking a vote, some clubs vote in their new members, right? To prevent, to make sure that they're held accountable for their actions. You have the option of voting in club members. When you're doing that, either in a virtual environment or in a professional one or in-person one, you have that responsibility. You are kind of the executor of the club president's will, right? Okay, return room to original configuration. Again, if you're meeting in person, and you can ask for help. What I love about Toastmasters is the community, that people help, and I love that. Pack up and store materials and dispose of trash. Again, that's more of a team effort, but if you can, go ahead and take care of that. Schedule meeting location. I believe I was reading that you guys meet at a different location once a month. When we get to the Q&A, I would love to hear if that is something that the SAA does. Ensure adequate supplies are available. See, that's dual and in line with the secretary. So some clubs align secretary with sergeant at arms because of the overlap, and that totally makes sense. But also you can align the secretary with treasurer, which is a whole other beast. So however your club does it, make sure that you're communicating on what works for you. Attend executive committee meetings. Again, that's a given. Arrange your replacement or assistance and prepare your successor for office. That's standard in any public situation, in a service situation, sorry. The executive committee, update the executive committee on the club meeting space status. So if that's what you're responsible for, then you would just simply report on that. Work to coordinate the meeting space. You can't do one without the other. That completely makes sense. Chair social and reception committee. Well, that's interesting. We, again, as a small club, don't have the experience of having committees. It's usually one person doing it. So if you are in a larger club, that is an interesting thing to note, that you can chair the social and reception committee, because again, you're kind of responsible for the environment of the sergeant of the club as sergeant of arms. Replace items as needed. I think that's more of a secretary thing to actually place an order, but you're certainly in charge of communicating that need. Okay, so the responsibility action plan, the how, the when, the who, and the what. This is no different than the secretary. All of that really depends on your executive team. Okay. If you want to go ahead, Sakine, and share the Sergeant at Arms resource.
Sure, will do.
Okay, so the club that meets at a restaurant once a month, can you guys please unmute and talk about what that responsibility looks like for you? I do apologize, I don't remember the name of who said that.
I was one of them who said that. Can you hear me?
Diane, yes.
And as far as the responsibility, we are a small club, and so it is a multi-person teamwork. The VP of PR makes sure he gets the word out. Our VP of membership will contact people who have responded that they would like to attend. And it's a lot of group texting, just to remind. Usually someone gets there early and they will work with the setup. I usually contact the restaurant ahead of time or our sergeant at arms so they can anticipate we'll be there. And I always ask for perhaps someplace in the corner where we won't be right in the middle of all the action.
Those are very good tips, Diane, and something that I attend a couple networking meetings, and that's something that I've noticed that they take care of that I thoroughly enjoy. And as Sergeant of Arms, I imagine that aligns with that position very well. And that's something I hadn't considered, is like you guys are kind of responsible for, when you're meeting in person, the environment, if you think of it terms like that. So thank you very much. And the coordinating, for sure. Kyrie, go ahead.
Good morning. A couple of quick things. This is my first year as Sergeant at Arms. But what I do in my day job is training and facilitating, and I will tell you, it is crucially important to check the temperature of the room.
Nice. Okay.
Here's why. 70 to 72 is your good range. Colder than that, people are chilly. They're looking for their sweaters. They're focused on warming up. Warmer than that, especially if it's an afternoon or evening meeting, people are going to get drowsy.
Oh, that's excellent to have that range. Thank you.
Yeah, so aim for 7, and most businesses, most restaurants will have it set in that range, but that's why it's important. The other thing is, I'm curious to know, we meet, Capital Toastmasters is meeting virtually right now, and as Sergeant at Arms, what we've decided for my responsibility is we've turned everything into a Google form. So all of our table topics, our best speaker, ballots, our guest book, all of those things are now Google forms. So I'm in charge of posting the links for those and working, like for the guest book, working with the VP of membership, those sorts of things. But I'm curious to see what other clubs that are virtual, how do you handle voting, like table topics and those sorts of things? Do you use a Google form or a Microsoft form, or how do other clubs do that? And is the Sergeant at Arms responsible for it?
I think that is that's amazing, Kyrie. Absolutely. I've also seen the tech director, right? There's in virtual world, we've seen where this tech director position has come available, or VP of technology. So the way, it varies on each club, but the way that my club does it is we simply utilize chat. We've identified somebody as the timer/vote counter, and you simply communicate that via the chat button in the Zoom environment. But they've also done polls. So we've seen, I visited other clubs where they're able to prepare a poll. And now from what I understand, it has to be prepared ahead of time, like set up, and then you can change the names so that you can select that way. But I imagine it would be either the Sergeant at Arms, because they're kind of, if it's not a tech director, then I imagine it would be the Sergeant of Arms that would present that poll at the correct time and also responsible for setting it up in advance. You had something else?
Oh, let's just say, it's interesting. I wish we used Zoom. I work for ADOT, and the state has gone totally Google on everything, which means we use Google Meet, which is great, except that Google Meet chat, you can't do a private chat. So that's why we went with using the Google Forms, because we couldn't do send a private chat to the vote counter. So just if anybody else is in that boat, but just as a way around that's what we've done.
Very good to know. Very cool. Nancy?
Thank you, Aislinn. One of the things our club does for speech evaluations is, if you look on Free Toast Host, when the speaker enters their topic and their path, you can actually download from Free Toast Host Agenda the evaluation form for that specific speech. And like we'll use chat when we vote on best speaker, best Toastmaster, best table topics master, and evaluator and such. So we kind of do a blend, but there is that capability to do that. A lot of times, if someone has forgotten to do that, the speaker will just email the evaluation form, because that minute between speeches really doesn't give you enough time to fill out that evaluation form. So we'll email that to the speaker after the meeting.
Very good. Yeah, one of the things that we do in our club is we give, during that 2 minutes, everybody kind of floods the speaker in chat with their thoughts. so that they get that immediate feedback that you would in the room, that in the room feel, and that recognition, and immediate, so they're not panicking right after they've given their speech, right? So they get the chat, but the official evaluator will have that form and email it directly after the meeting to the speaker. So we kind of split the beast and do both that way. Kyra, you made a generic evaluation Google form for everybody to use in addition to the evaluator. And I think that is super helpful, because what I should be embarrassed to share, but I'm not embarrassed about anything, is that it took me forever to realize in doing the free toast host version, where you're selecting the speech and the evaluation. Those evaluations are specific to the assignment and the speech. It has a different category every time. So we were using a generic one as well until that feature on Free Toast Host got pointed out. And I went there one time to look at it. I was like, oh, this is similar, but there's 1 or 2 questions specific to that assignment. So that was important to me, and I communicated that to the president, and she agreed that we utilize that official one, at least as the evaluator. So no, I think, and now I'm thinking about it, I think I would love an actual Google form, because we did a Google document, and that is not the same. We did Google documents before Google Forms were updated and now so easy to use. So I want to transition a lot of our documents to Google Forms. So thank you so much for sharing that that's how you guys have done it.
Hi, Aislinn. I would like to add, in our club, what we do is we use Microsoft Teams for our virtual meetings, and we created an online form within Teams for voting. So it's the same link, and every time we have the session, to vote for best table topics or best speaker or best evaluator, there's one form, and participants fill it in, and then we get the results online and we announce it. But we also save it, because Teams does it. We don't need to do anything. And also for the evaluation forms and speaker introduction in Teams, there's a folder for every session we have. So ahead of the meeting, the speaker posts their speaker introduction and also evaluation form in that folder for that day. So we all know that way to go and grab it. But also we sometimes, some of them just give the feedback in the chat as well, which is instant, like as I said. So we do both, but I think everything is managed within one system, within Microsoft Teams. So I feel like we use the Teams to its maximum extent.
Good. That is, and that's to me the biggest takeaway from TLI is learning those tips and tricks on how to lighten that load and keep everything so that everybody can be on the same page, especially for legacy purposes. You don't think about that when you're going into it, but there was so much that we had to go backwards and try to figure out why we've ever done it this way, and pull a vote to try to change it for the changing times. So it was really challenging, and I really wouldn't want to put anybody through that again in the future. So really quick from Sheila, we have a question. How are the evaluations sent to the speaker? In my club, we email it directly to them. Does anybody else have a different way that you deliver and present the evaluation directly to the speaker?
What we do is we take a printout, we fill it out, and we scan it and send it as an attachment. We email the document.
Okay. And if you get it off of not Free Toast, but if you get it off of, actually, yeah, if you get it off of the agenda, the way we've been talking about with Free Toast, it's fillable. So you could just do file save, but also if you get the fillable version and you don't have the file save, you can also print to PDF now with Microsoft. And I thought that was super helpful. So you can type it in and make sure that your evaluation form that you download either from toastmasters.org or from the Free Toast version, it's a fillable PDF that you can either print or save. And that has been huge because, again, it's not that I hate paper. It's just like it doesn't really serve a place. And me traveling every week back and forth to Peoria and Cottonwood, it's really hard. I can't bring my whole office with me unless it's in the shape of a laptop. So that's just been one of the things that has saved me from trying to keep track of all this paper. So Chris, he invites the speaker to the response portion of the evaluation form, and then they ask, oh, okay, and then they make a make a copy of that form and save it to their own personal Google Drive. That is super helpful because one of the things as a speaker that I don't know that it's really honed in on is, you know, you're responsible for that evaluation is proof that you did the speech. And it also helps because I don't know how many speeches I've done, but if I have them saved with evaluation, then I can refer back to that, to that feedback and use that to improve my next speech. But I can also have it so that I can show proof of when I did it. And that has come in handy a time or two throughout these transitions as well. And I'm going to quickly just share the same type of resources. Stop video. Thank you, Michael. So I'm going to go ahead and share the additional resources page for the Sergeant at Arms. And again, these are the direct links from Toastmaster.org and what they feel like would help you. Maybe the ballots and brief evaluations I would use, but other than that, again, I feel like it's the club secretary that would physically actually do that, but you can certainly be backup for it. And the Distinguished Club Plan and Success Program and Club Plan Success Plan, that's a team effort.
Thank you so much, Aislinn, for such a great presentation. There's a lot actually to learn, and really appreciate your time and presentation. All right, so I think this concludes our presentation of Secretary and Sergeant at Arms. Thank you again for coming. Have a great rest of your day.